Okay, I had said this a while ago, and I basically have been speaking to a bunch of my friends, and we're kind of sort of the same mind. Something is coming, and in our minds, it's going to be pretty bad. And I honestly believe that this thing is going to be led by Donald Trump, if not him, people that support him, etc. Because this is really getting out of hand now. You're going to see this section from MSNBC, and I know all the guys on the right are going to scream libtard MSNBC, but reporting situations is reporting situations, so you could take it for whatever you want. But we as a people need to be upset. The Hispanics are already upset, and the Muslims are getting upset. And by the time you get through, there's pretty much going to be nobody that's not upset at Trump and basically the majority. So anyway, this is going to be a fairly long segment regarding Trump's comments about the Muslims. They're going to throw in a little bit about the brother that got accosted by the police, and then they're going to throw in an additional portion of a female protester that was attacked, and now she has been arrested, okay, by the Trump campaign. So let me play this, and then I'll come in at the end.
Tuesday, but as you were just hearing in that interview with Kate Snow, once again, Donald Trump controversies are stealing the spotlight. Right now, Muslim leaders are holding a news conference to demand an apology for these comments by the Republican frontrunner.
I think Islam hates us. There's something there that there's a tremendous hatred there. There's a tremendous hatred.
And so this press conference by CARE, a leading civil rights organization for Muslims. Let's listen in.
This latest act of bias includes a few specific groups who deserve an apology. Trump should apologize to all of the American Muslims who have served honorably our nation's armed forces. He should visit Arlington Cemetery and pay respect to the fallen soldiers, among them American Muslims who have paid the highest price. Trump should apologize to all of the American Muslims who have honorably served in our nation's law enforcement and first responders, including the family of Mohammed Salman Hamdani, who gave his life as first responder at the World Trade Center on 9/11/2001. Trump should apologize.
And so, CARE, you heard it there, demanding an apology from Donald Trump for his comments on Muslims. It's not the first time this has happened, and just one of what is a new series of controversies surrounding Donald Trump. NBC's Kerry Sanders is in Coral Gables covering the Trump campaign in advance of tonight's debate. And Kerry, let's start what we've been seeing just here with this news conference. And what is the campaign saying about this?
Well, the campaign is not directly responding to what has been said. As you know, Donald Trump made those statements in an interview with CNN. CARE, for those who don't know, is the Council on American Islamic Relations. It's a voice in this country for those who are Muslims. And as you heard, and before we even picked it up, they were talking about the fact that Donald Trump had first proposed banning Muslims from entering the country, and now they say he's moved the line to outright hatred of Muslims. This is a serious concern when you take a global view and look at this. With Donald Trump's position currently as leading in the Republican Party, everything he says is not just for domestic consumption. This is something that people are going to be hearing around the world. And so while there is fear from Muslims in this country, there is also anger beyond the borders of the United States. Let's listen to a moment here of what CARE is saying following Donald Trump's statements.
They're telling us to go, so we get up.
Okay, we're going to get to that in a moment. Let me move on and just talk about the sort of the the anger and sort of some of the violence that we're beginning to see that's following the Donald Trump rallies. We have seen in the past that there have been protesters. Sometimes those protesters have been pushed around, but it looks like we saw a different turn of the page here in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I spoke to some girls before the actual event. They were there, Muslim girls, and I asked them, are you here to protest or are you simply here to listen? And they said, look, it's the first time I'm going to be voting. They're American 18-year-old girls. They wanted to listen. They were among those who stood up silently and protested. But there was a moment there last night where some of the protesters, Black Lives Matter, actually got up and started being escorted out because they were getting pushed around. Now we look at this video and you can see Rakeem Jones. He's 26 years old. He has been disrupting the event, and so he's being led out. Now as he's being led out by the Cumberland deputies from the Sheriff's Department there, you can see he gets sucker punched.
Now let me stop you right there. See, that's where misinformation comes in, and I'm not sure which way it was going, because the interview that was done with this gentleman, he said he wasn't disrupting anything. He said someone said to him that Trump was such and such, and then the person 3 rows down started something with him. Here come the Fayetteville cops. You know, they're thinking that the Fayetteville cops are going to go get the guy that was messing with them, but they in turn get him and the guy that was photographing or recording everything, and then they walk them out. So there was no disruption. They got them up and they were walking out. Trump made a statement about go home to your mama. The guy reacts, boom, and then the guy gets sucker punched. Where was the disruption? Now, unless that information is totally false, MSNBC, you know, wherever you're getting it from, you need to make sure that you double check your sources.
And somebody there standing who is a Trump supporter and hits him, boom, takes him down. Now, what's interesting is the deputies continue to take Rakeem Jones out. They eventually take him to the ground and they put handcuffs on him. Meantime, the person...
Now, guess what? According to Mr. Jones and the photographer, they didn't put handcuffs on him. So, again, here's MSNBC, you know, I mean, I know Fox is bad, but these guys got to get their acts together.
Sucker punched him, stays at the event. It's not until this little clip of video actually winds up on social media and you start looking at it that the Sheriff's Department decides that they're going to begin an investigation. They begin their investigation, and today they arrested John Franklin McGraw, and they've charged him with assaulting Rakeem Jones and disorderly conduct. He's currently being held on $2,500 bond. But what those who have seen this video are asking themselves is, it's not just the one deputy there. There were other deputies there who are watching this unfold. Why didn't they go after the person who sucker punched Rakeem Jones? Now, Rakeem Jones, who we heard just a few minutes ago on NBC News here on MSNBC, talking via Skype, talked about how he was being yelled at. And at one point, he even responded. A lot of people were yelling at him. He showed them the finger. They showed him the finger. There was a little bit back and forth. Let's listen to a moment of how Rakeem Jones explains what transpired right at him.
They're telling us to go, so we get up. And as we're getting up, you see the video, and I'm walking up surrounded by sheriffs, I got hit. Like, it just threw me off, and next thing I'm on the ground.
And so here we hear a little bit from Rakeem. Now, we asked the campaign, and Hope Hicks, who's the spokesman for the Trump campaign, said in a very short statement, we are not involved. And as you look at what's sort of surrounding what was initially Donald Trump's signs, say the silent majority, he has told those in the crowd that they are the noisy majority in this country. We're beginning to see people acting out in a way that is sort of like, as I said, turning the page. Now, this follows an allegation that on Tuesday at a press conference, a reporter, Michelle Fields, says that the campaign manager, Corey Lewandowski, actually grabbed her and manhandled her as she was trying to ask Donald Trump a question. Now, the campaign and Corey Lewandowski has responded with a tweet saying that she is an attention getter and she's tried to do this, that she has put herself in the center of other events like Occupy Wall Street. But Michelle Fields says in a tweet, she puts up a picture, and in that picture you can see her arm, and in that picture you can see that there are some bruises. So she says, what, did these magically appear? So there's clearly a tenor that is surrounding right now the Donald Trump campaign. Michelle Field is not saying any more. I don't think we're going to hear much more about this, but nonetheless, it's a tenor of what's developing around the Donald Trump campaign. All of this as they're getting ready to go into a debate tonight where Donald Trump had indicated through his campaign that this was going to be a little bit quieter, a little bit calmer, maybe a little bit more presidential approach from the man who is seeking the Republican nomination. Chris?
Thank you so much, Kerry Sanders, who is on the scene of where that debate will be held later today. Let me just pick up on what he said about that Breitbart reporter who says that she was, in fact, shoved by Corey Lewandowski. She did write about it, and she wrote that somehow she was grabbed tightly by the arm and she was yanked down. Quote, I almost fell to the ground but was able to maintain my balance. Nonetheless, I was shaken. She writes further that the Washington Post's Ben Terrace immediately remarked that it was Trump's campaign manager, Corey Lewandowski, who aggressively tried to pull me to the ground. I quickly turned around and saw Lewandowski and Trump exiting the building together. No apology, no explanation of why he did this, and now you have seen on Twitter that the Trump campaign is pushing back against her version of these events and saying that she is an attention getter. Let me bring in Steve Kornacki as he has been watching all of this unfold. Let's go back to the fact that now we have a situation in one of these events where somebody has actually been arrested, who has been charged, that there has been violence going on. There is concern about violence at future events. And here we have another debate in advance of a critical series of primaries, including one here, where a lot of the attention is going to be on something other than the issues.
Yeah, and like you're saying, I think this was something, it happened today and it's grabbing headlines. I think it's something you could see this coming from the last few weeks, the last few months. At these rallies, the protesters start speaking up. These are huge crowds. They're very worked up. They get worked up at these rallies. Things have been said. These could have been picked up before. Comments have been made to these two protesters from people in the crowd, and Donald Trump has egged them on in a lot of ways, to a point that before today people were saying this is the sort of thing that might happen at some point, and now it has. I just say this is also Inside Edition, the TV show,
yes,
caught up with the guy who threw the punch, who's been arrested. He said, well, number one, people asked why he did it. He said, number one, we don't know if he's ISIS, we don't know who he is, but we know he's not acting like an American and cussing me and sticking his face in my head. If he wants it laid out, I laid it out.
So there you have that side of the story. We've heard from the person via the interview with Kate Snow, who was allegedly assaulted. And now we're getting reaction from the Democratic side, because just a short time ago, Rachel Maddow had a chance to sit down with Hillary Clinton, and she talked about this incident with the punch. Take a listen.
A man was just charged today with assault and battery for attacking a young black protester who was getting thrown out of a Trump rally last night. I wondered if you have any advice for people who are thinking about going to Donald Trump events in order to protest them. Do you think that's a worthwhile political response? He's obviously really bothered and upset a lot of people in this country.
Well, and me too. I count me among those who are truly distraught and even appalled by a lot of what I see going on, what I hear being said. You know, you don't make America great by, dumping on everything that made America great, like freedom of speech and assembly and, you know, the right of people to protest. Clearly, I know that everybody in public life gets protested against, and sometimes people do have to be removed, but it should be done in an appropriate manner. Other people in the audience should not be joining in. Mr. Trump should not be urging people on. This is deeply distressing, and I think as the campaign goes further, more and more Americans are going to be, you know, really disturbed by the kind of campaign he's running.
This is a clear distinction between the Democrats and the Republicans. Many Republicans, including our own Joe Scarborough, have talked about this as well, about when you have these incidents and these debates that become more about sort of this cult of personality and about going to the lowest common denominator as opposed to the issues. I just want to play, well, first of all, let me get your reaction to what we heard Hillary Clinton say, because I think there is something that is said about this campaign, about this electorate, when we see eventually how people react to what just happened.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, we've talked so much about also what is driving the Trump phenomenon. What is he trying to sort of capitalize on, trying to exploit? And his critics would say, what is he trying to worsen it? Cultural divisions, senses of anxiety among one group about another group, about the changing nature of America. And so in a lot of ways, if you're a candidate and that's what you're seeking to tap into, if that's what you're seeking to capitalize on, then when you get these incidents at your events, it almost becomes like a real-time animation to the crowd of exactly what you're talking about and what you're tapping into. It's, hey, I'm here to protect you, I'm here to stand up for you, and here's one of the outsiders. Here's somebody from the outside who wants to change your world a little bit, and they're in your face. And so it's the kind of reaction that is almost encouraged by that when that's sort of the message.
And you also have...
Now, one thing I want to say, that white guy that punched him, he was gonna try to get at somebody, because you can see him setting up in order to punch, because the guy that he punched was 3 or 4 steps down below, wasn't facing him, wasn't talking to him, period. So he was setting up. What he did with malice and forethought.
A situation where none of this would maybe be happening. We wouldn't even be talking about this if not for technology, if someone hadn't shot a video, if that had not gone viral. In this case, the guy's name who shot that video is Ronnie Rouse. Rakeem Jones is the person who took that punch, and just a short time ago, Kate Snow talked to them. We're going to play you that interview now in its entirety. Take a listen. Time ago, Kate Snow's exclusive interview with those two who are in the middle now of this latest Donald Trump controversy. Ali Vitale, who is our embed, was actually at that rally last night. She's been to a number of Trump rallies. She has seen how things can escalate once the protesting begins. Ali, walk us through what happened last night. Where were you? What did you see? And what was the crowd reaction?
Well, last night was something that we've seen somewhat frequently in terms of the number of protesters that were there at the rally. There were a lot of people interrupting, and this is something that we've come to expect. It's become a little bit of the bedrock of a Trump event, so much so that he continuously says that he loves the protesters, that it makes the press show how many people he has in the crowd. Of course, he does also have the reaction of saying, get them out, get them out. So it is a range of emotion in terms of how Mr. Trump does respond to protesters. But last night was something interesting, because it was the first time we've really seen someone punch someone in the face at one of these rallies. And just to set the stage a little bit, because protests have become such a focal point of a lot of these rallies, they do oftentimes have an announcement beforehand saying that this is a non-violent rally. Please do not harm the protesters. Obviously, this is not an instance where they listened to that announcement. But that is something that we've come to expect, is that when people protest, a lot of people in the crowd get very upset. They feel like they're defending their candidate, Donald Trump. And there have been times that he's almost pushed for this kind of behavior. I mean, in Las Vegas, for example, when someone interrupted, he said that he wanted to punch that person in the face. Previously in Iowa, he said that if someone were to knock a protester out, he would pay for their legal fees. So there is this kind of tension that is fostered by him on the stump and when he's on the stage, saying that this is something that the crowd, feeds off of. And he does definitely increase the tension in the room. He increases the excitement. Oftentimes when there's a lot of protesters, something he'll say is, do we have fun at these Trump rallies? Aren't they unlike anything else? And it's true, they are unlike most other political events, but this is probably not the way that you want to be unlike most political events in terms of how your audience is reacting. This is definitely not the kind of thing that you'd want to see.
So somebody gets punched in the face, and you see then he falls to the ground, and then they drag the person who gets hit out. They leave the person who hit him behind. So does then the rally just keep going on as normal? What happens then?
Well, this is the first time that I've seen anything like this happen. Generally, what happens when you interrupt at a Trump event is law enforcement will come over to you. They will escort you out, which is exactly what happened last night. However, there was obviously a breakdown when it came time to figuring out who actually punched this man in the face, which is a very clear problem, and they are doing an internal investigation into that. Because of North Carolina law, the police department said that they couldn't further comment on it, but that's something that they're also looking into, is where the breakdown happened here. And I've reached out to the Trump campaign, actually, to see what their reaction is to this arrest, and also, of course, what happened